So we're going to learn a little bit together, and I'm looking forward to the second half, the lunch portion of that. Does everybody get a chance to participate? I do. My name is Shannon Mims. I serve as a therapist at Melinda Graham and Associates, which is right down the road behind O'Reilly's, the road that's beside O'Reilly's, the old lab building. So I work as a therapist there. I've worked as in a PHP and an IOP context as well in the past. And so I've been doing this for a minute. So Brad, not too long ago that we've gotten pretty young, haven't we? Yes. A little bit, yeah. So the game plan is I'm going to read an excerpt from a book called After You Believe. It is by Nicholas Tom Wright, also known as N.T. Wright. He was at one time the Bishop of Durham. He was a professor at Oxford for many, many years, and then he took a professorship at the University of St. Andrews. So I'm going to read an excerpt from his work now. Thursday, January 15, 2009, was another ordinary day in New York City, or so it seemed. But by that evening, people were talking of a miracle. Flight 2549, a regular U.S. Airways trip from LaGuardia Airport, took off at 15:26 local time, bound for Charlotte, North Carolina. The captain, anybody know his name? Chesley Sullenberger III, also known as Sully, did all the usual checks. Everything was fine in the Airbus A320. Fine until 2 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft ran straight into a flock of Canada geese. One goose in a jet engine would be serious. A flock was disastrous. Airports play all sorts of tricks to prevent birds gathering in the flight path, but it still happens occasionally. Almost at once, both the engines were severely damaged and lost their power. The plane was at that point heading north over the Bronx, one of the most densely populated parts of the city. Captain Sully and his co-pilot had to make several major decisions instantly if they were going to save the lives of people not only on board but also on the ground. They could see one or two small local airports in the distance, but quickly realized that they couldn't be sure of making it that far. If they attempted it, they might well crash land in a built-up area on the way. Likewise, the option of putting the plane down on the New Jersey Turnpike, a busy main road leading in and out of the city, would present huge problems and dangers for the plane and its occupants, let alone for cars and their drivers on the road. That left one option, the Hudson River. It's difficult to crash land on water. One small mistake, catch the nose or one of the wings in the river, so to say, and the plane will turn over and over like a gymnast before breaking up and sinking altogether. In the 2 or 3 minutes they had, 2 or 3 minutes that they had before landing, Sully and his co-pilot had to do the following vital things, along with plenty of other tasks that we amateurs wouldn't understand. No offense if anybody's a pilot today in the house. They had to shut down the engines. They had to set the right speed so that the plane could glide as long as possible without power. Fortunately, Sully is also a gliding instructor. They had to get the nose of the plane down to maintain speed. They had to disconnect the autopilot and override the flight management system. They had to activate the ditch system, which seals vents and valves to make the plane as waterproof as possible once it hit the water. Most important of all, they had to fly and then glide the plane in a fast left-hand turn so that it could come down facing south, going with the flow of the river. And having already turned off the engines, they had to do this using only the battery-operated systems and the emergency generator. Then they had to straighten the plane up from the tilt of the sharp left turn so that on landing, the plane would be exactly level from side to side. Finally, they had to get the nose back up again and not too far up and land straight and flat on the water. And they did it. Everyone got off safely, with Captain Sully himself walking up and down the aisle a couple of times to check that everyone had escaped before leaving himself. Once in the life raft along with other passengers, he went one better. He took off his shirt in the freezing January afternoon and gave it to a passenger who was suffering in the cold. The story has already been told and retold and will live on in the memory not only of those involved, but of every New Yorker and many further afield. Just over 7 years and 4 months after the horrible devastation of September 11, 2001, New York had an airplane story to celebrate. Now, as I say, many people describe the dramatic events as a miracle. At one level, I wouldn't want to question that, says N.T. Wright. But the really fascinating thing about the whole business is the way it spectacularly illustrates a vital truth, a truth which many today have either forgotten or never known in the first place. You could call it the power of right habits. You might say it was the result of many years of training, remember that word, training, and experience. You could call it character. Ancient writers had a word for it. They referred to it as virtue. Virtue in this sense isn't simply another way of saying goodness, not a morality issue per se. The word has sometimes been flattened out like that, perhaps because we instinctively want to escape its challenge. But that isn't its strict meaning. Virtue, in the strict sense, is what happens when someone has made 1,000 small choices requiring effort and concentration to do something which is good and right, but which doesn't come naturally, so to say. And then on the 1,001st time, when it really matters, they find that they do what's required automatically, as it were. On that 1,001st occasion, it does indeed look as if it just happens. But reflection tells us that it doesn't just happen as easily as that. Now, if you or I had been flying the Airbus A320 that afternoon and had done what comes naturally, or we'd allowed things just to happen, we would probably have crashed into the Bronx. Again, apologies if there are pilots in the house today. As this example shows, N.T. Wright says, virtue is what happens when wise and courageous choices have become second nature, not first nature, as though they happen naturally, rather a second order level of naturalness, like an acquired taste. Such choices and actions which started off being practiced with difficulty ended up being, yes, second nature. Sully had not, of course, been born with the ability to fly a plane, let alone the specific skills he exhibited in those vital 3 minutes. None of the skills required, and certainly none of the courage, restraint, cool judgment, and concern for others which he displayed is part of the kit we humans possess from birth. You have to work at mastering, I know that's already here, but you have to work at mastering that sort of skill set. Moving steadily toward that goal, you have to want to do it all, to choose to learn it all, to practice doing it all, again and again and again and again. And then sometimes, when the moment comes, it happens automatically, as it were, as it did for Sully. The skills and ability ran right through him, top to toe. Powerful story. Many of us have not had the experience or the training that would help us to handle what many people refer to as negative emotions. Many of us have not had the parental reflection, maybe, to handle negative emotions in a positive manner. And as a result, there are consequences to how we navigate life and relationships. Now, when I say negative emotions, what are some emotions that come to mind?
Stress.
Okay, stress. Anger. Grief. What else? Resentment. Ooh, that's a good one. Not a good one, but it's a powerful one. Envy, jealousy, betrayal, rejection, feeling less than. Right? These are negative emotions. Now, I say negative emotions, and they're oftentimes referred to as negative emotions, not as if they don't have positive aspects to them, or the potential for positive aspects to them, but they hit us, or they come with a sting to them, and hence they're called negative emotions. There's Jasmine and Jose. Jasmine and Jose are like 5, maybe 6 years of age, and they're cousins. Now Jasmine comes over to Jose's house, and his mom wants to go to the flower shop. So they all get in the car, they're on their way to the flower shop. Little Jasmine has never seen flowers, like an array of colorful flowers in real life before. So she is uber excited to see this. So she is anticipating going to the flower shop. They arrive at the flower shop, they walk in, and Jose immediately goes to the right, touching this, that, and the other that he should not be touching, but he is taken aback by the cool colors that he sees. Now little Jasmine, she goes to the left, and she is astonished at the array of vibrancy, the beautiful bouquets, the floral arrangements, and all of the pretty colors. And Jose, as he's getting into mischief over here, he and Jasmine have a pretty good relationship. So Jose finds this one particular flower that stands out. It's in a canister by itself, and he's looking at the intricate details on the blossom, and he's like, ooh, Jasmine would love this. And Jose, he doesn't know what it is per se. He grabs right up under the flower, the petals. He grabs right up under it, pulls it out. As Jasmine has her back turned towards Jose, as she's looking at all the colors, he tosses this long stem rose in her direction. A freshly cut long stem rose in her direction. Jasmine! She hears it. She turns around. She's taken aback at the beauty of this that she's only seen in cartoons or on TV shows. She's seen it in a coloring book. It's a rose. And without hesitation, instinctively, she grabs hold of this long stem, freshly cut rose, and what happens? Say again? Thorns. And she goes to crying. It's a piercing experience, literally. She's crying. Jose's mom comes over, takes care of her, wraps her up, bandages her up. She's wiping away her tears, and she's okay. Everybody rest assured, Jasmine's okay. They get in the car, they go home. Jose's mom got what she needed at the flower shop that day. Until 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks later, they had to go back to the flower shop. Jasmine is once again at Jose's house, and she's thinking about all the flowers and the arrangement and the beautiful, beautiful vibrancy that she witnessed and beheld when she went into the store. They get out, same scene. Go into the shop. Jose, mischief, goes to the right, touching this, that, and the other, and he should not be touching. Jasmine goes to the left and just taking in the beauty, beholding the wonderful colors that are all around her. Now Jose, he sees another flower. It doesn't look like the one he saw last time, but it is a rose, and it's been dipped and it's been colorized. It's blue this time. And he's like, oh, I like blue. Surely Jasmine's going to like blue. He grabs it from the canister, ignoring that it's a freshly cut, long stem rose. It's blue this time, remember? And he's like, Jasmine! Throws it in her direction. And Jasmine, hearing Jose say her name, turns. What happens? Does she grab it instinctively? Why? Because she did that before, right? What happened last time? She got hurt. A piercing experience in grabbing that. All of a sudden, she finds herself in a guarded posture because of what happened before. It's not to say that the rose in and of itself is bad. I like roses. But because of what she experienced and the hurt that she experienced before, she's in this posture of guardedness. And many of us, because of experiences that we have faced and issues maybe at home or situations in schools or in classroom settings, many of us, because of work scenarios or maybe conflict that we have faced, we have experienced this common factor to us all called hurt. And we are in this posture of guardedness. Now, I believe that we are hardwired in many ways for meaningful, significant, substantial relationships. Meaningful, significant, substantial relationships. It's hard to operate from a posture of vulnerability when you're like this. Guarded. It's hard to experience true intimacy in a relationship. Intimacy with someone else when you're guarded because of past pain and past hurt. Many of us, for a variety of reasons, have not been trained. We have not developed the skills necessary to handle negative emotions or experiences and trauma and situations, circumstances, daily stressors that elicit negative emotions. And so what we do is what Brene Brown, who is LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker, and she's a PhD in the field, what she summarizes by 3 primary points. This is what we do. When we're not trained how to handle negative emotions in a positive manner, typically our go-to is one of 3 things. The first is that we hire some bouncers. Now don't get nervous. I don't know if there's any clubs in Vidalia. But if you've ever been to a club, not recommending it, I'm all about spatial distancing and safe practice and all that good stuff. But if you've ever been to a club or seen it on TV, okay, what's the purpose of the bouncers in a club? Say again? Security. They keep at bay the chaos. If anything's going amok or mire, they keep at bay the chaos so that those who are centrally located in the midst of the club can have fun or experience the positive emotions or positive vibes that they came there for, right? So Brene talks about these bouncers that oftentimes, if we're not careful, we will hire whenever we experience negative emotions that we don't really know what to do with. The first one is anger. Now I refer to this one as the Dwayne Johnson, the Rock response, or reaction, the reactionary disposition. And I do that because it's a hulk of an emotion. We just pop off to pop off. We get upset, we talk back, we snap back, we are highly heightened, experiencing heightened irritability. We are highly upset and we just are angry. Now we may have experienced the negative emotion of abandonment, but we're just mad because we have hired anger. We may feel less than when we walk into a classroom, but it bleeds through as anger. We may be grieving the loss of someone near and dear to us. And somebody may ask, why are you so mad? Because we have hired or employed this bouncer, anger. And it's bouncing away the negative emotion or even the thought of processing the negative emotion of either abandonment or feeling less than or grief or whatever the negative emotion is, many that were mentioned earlier by you guys. And so we hire this bouncer, anger. And I refer to it as the Rock because it's a hulk of a reactionary disposition. Or, Brene also lists, we might hire this reactionary disposition or this game, that's a game in some sense, but it's not too fun, called blame. Now, I affectionately refer to the blame game as the Kevin Hart. Now, we've got the Rock, that's anger, but I refer to blame as Kevin Hart because if you ever follow Kevin Hart on IG, what's he doing? He's blaming everybody. It's the Rock's fault, right? It's another actor's fault. It's another comedian's fault. We find ourselves playing this blame game that we don't know what to do with the negative emotions that we've experienced or we're experiencing. We don't know what to do with the trauma or the sense of inadequacy that we may be enveloped in. And so what we do is we just blame everybody else. It is Mama's fault. It's my dad's fault. It's the teacher's fault. It's that cop that pulled me over. It's his fault. It's the doctor's fault. It's my partner's fault. We blame everybody and we fail to consider what's my role in this? What's my responsibility in this? So either anger, we've got employed anger, which is known as the Rock, right? Or we've got Kevin Hart, blame, or Brene references this other reactionary disposition that we can maintain, this behavior that we can enact, avoidance. Now, I see this one a lot. Doesn't matter. You leave me? Okay. See if I can. You call me that? All right. Or in the words of a lot of the kiddos I work with, and sometimes my daughter tries to mention this and daddy tries to like, it's all good. Or it is what it is. know if it is, but it should be. Right? Avoidance. It reminds me of my little girl. Whenever she was much younger, she would get under the covers whenever she was supposed to be asleep and read, and she was wanting to read, but she's supposed to be asleep. She'd get under the covers and she'd put the covers over her head. And she would convince herself, if I can't see Dad, you can't see me. And she would operate. Now she's much older now, but she used to do that when she was younger. Anger, blame, and avoidance. We find ourselves operating in these behavioral patterns when we don't know how to handle negative emotions in healthier or positive ways. And so rather than employ them, one of the things that I do is I come alongside clients and families. I come alongside persons and groups of people and help them to fire. Sorry, Rock. Sorry, Kevin. Let's give a name to avoidance. We could either call it Jason Statham, Brad, I'm not sure if they know who that is, or Jackie Chan, right? Because it's kind of a ninja of sorts. But we can fire anger, blame, and avoidance and learn how to wrestle with and possibly even process these negative emotions without the go-to default autopilot response being anger, blame, or avoidance. Renee lists the second major way of handling negative emotions in a not so healthy way is numbing these negative emotions. Or you experience trauma or loss, or you experience these feelings that you do not enjoy, that no one really would like, and then we seek to numb it. Now when I say numb negative emotions or numb negative feelings, what do we typically think about people use when they numb? Alcohol, substances of some sort, drugs and alcohol, right? And that's a correct answer, but oftentimes that's the go-to numb negative emotions. Sometimes it's, dare I say, shopping. Buying stuff you don't need with money you don't have to impress people you don't know. Sometimes it's exercise to the nth degree. All about exercise, but if it gets in the way of daily healthy functioning for you and your family, it can become problematic. There's somebody a long time ago that I worked with that would be in the gym for 6 or 7 hours. Like, when you see people, when you eat, when you sleep, where do you work? How do you pay for the gym membership? Right? But seeking to numb negative emotions with something that potentially is good, but if it's done to the nth degree, can become problematic. Social media is another possible way that we numb negative emotions. Finding ourselves lost in this vacuum of a black hole of sorts, where we are inundated with this virtual reality and this virtual persona and this seeking after acceptance in what seems to be a safer environment that's likely to experience rejection in a social world. And so if we're not careful, we can incorporate these behaviors into our daily routine and our lives in such a way where we are seeking to numb negative emotions and not process them, not handle them in a healthier manner. So we've got the bouncers, anger, blame, and avoidance. We've got numbing, and we just listed an array of examples of numbing. The third thing that Renee mentions that typically we're conditioned in our society or our culture to do whenever we experience, whatever it is we experience that elicits or brings about negative emotions, is we stuff them. We stockpile them, is a term that she'll reference. We just press them deeper and deeper into the core of who we are, and we don't talk about it. We just keep on pushing it down. We don't identify it. We don't verbalize it. And it's kind of like a soda can. If you just take an unopened soda can, shake it, and shake it, and shake it, and shake it. What's building on the inside? Pressure. Pressure. And there's this war that will take place between you and your body, and at the end of the day, your body will, in fact, win out. And what I see in my experience in doing this for many, many years is I see people that they come in for services. We do an intake, they come in for services, and They have stuffed and stockpiled emotions, so much so that it's been shaking and shaking, and life has a way of shaking us up. And all of a sudden they experience symptoms or an array of symptomatology that sounds very much like the clinical description of two of the most prevalent disorders in our country, dare I say the world. What are they? Anxiety and depression. Now, I'm not saying that there are not physiological reasons for persons having anxiety disorders or depressive disorders, but there is a power to talking about what you're going through in the confines of a safe place, what I call sacred space, where you can be vulnerable and open, and it's okay. You can process it. You're not worried about the happening again because somebody's giving you room. Now, for some, that's going to be a therapy session. For some, it's a church group. For others, it may be a peer group that you have. It may be a club that you're part of. But a safe place to let your hair down, so to say, be you, and process what you are going through. If we don't have that space, what do we tend to do? If we don't have that safe place to process what we are going through, we'll hire all the bouncers. Anger, blame, avoidance. We'll find some behavioral patterns of numbing, and then we'll continue stuffing and stockpiling. All the while, we are inundated like a tsunami wave with symptoms or an array of symptomatology that is both dealing with anxiety and its cousin, depression. Now, what I want to do in the remainder of the time that we have is I want to talk about two things that I want to leave us with that we can do now. And then I'm going to read an overview, a very short overview from a tremendous resource, Psychology Today, about anxiety and depression. And then, time willing, we will do the fun stuff of questions and answers. All right? Yeah, the first one is what I want us to grab hold of in so many ways is that we need to build a positive support system. We need to develop a positive support system. Now, I teach this and I share this with many people with whom I work about the inner circle of influence, those who are near and dear, those who are in the inner circle of your life, shaping you in your choices, in your habits, and your character. And your character is always in process. The choices that you make again and again and again and again, they turn into habits that we keep. And those will build the people that we are becoming. And we need to surround ourselves with and develop a positive system of support. Not just when we get pulled over by a crisis or crises. And then we reach into the glove compartment box of a therapy session or a phone call or a text or, God forbid, a post. You won't believe what? We need to be building this all along so that when the crisis does hit, just like Captain Sully in the story that we read earlier, he knew what to do. He didn't have to look over to the co-pilot. Okay, there is a how to crash a plane on a river manual for dummies up under your seat. Please grab it. Look at the index. Okay, look up deactivate the autopilot. I'll look up activate the ditch system. Right? He didn't have time for that. He had how many minutes before that plane was going to go down? 2 to 3 minutes. And how did he know to do this? When people interviewed him, it was Brad, you may remember some of these interviews. When they would interview him and they would reference things as being a miracle, he would acknowledge the miraculous aspects of it, but he would always applaud his training. There's that word again. His training. Because to be a pilot, you have to go through training initially and all along in order to maintain your pilot's license. He would train again and again and again, so much so that he became a safety certificate instructor. He taught that stuff. Now, it's one thing to study to pass a test. It's another thing to study something so much so that you can teach it. And he knew this material like it was second nature, like the back of his hand. So that when crisis hit, He knew exactly what to do, and all souls on board were saved. Building, being intentional, conscientious about building a positive support system in your life. Now, I'm busy. We all busy. I got kids. Many people in this room do have kids. If we're not careful, we can be numbing. Let me back up for a moment. We could be ascribing to this numbing. It's not called out too much in our culture, but it's a tactic of numbing. And it's celebrated. It's one of the most celebrated, dare I say, addictive tendencies or proclivities or just all-out addictions that characterizes our country. Starts with a W, ends with a K. Work. We could work ourselves to the bone 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours, not seeing our family, not taking care of ourselves. We could be doing that, and we're addicted to the hustle, right? So much so that we're not developing on an ongoing, regular basis this positive system of support that we need. Does that make sense? Intentionality about building a positive, I said positive. Look at their choices, look at their habits, and look at the character that's under construction. See if it's positive. And surround yourself with people that carve out that sacred space so that you can let your hair down and you can process the trauma and the pain and the loss and the worry, the workload, the questions. Many of us have questions as to what our career is going to look like, how it's going to unfold, where we're going to work upon graduation, how we're going to pay these student loans. I have gotten so many phone calls and worked with so many families the past several months where they have lost loved ones, moms, dads, and grandparents to COVID-19. There is so much pain that is in this room that is hidden in many ways. And one of the strongest things to do, this is not a pitch for services. I'm pretty busy. It's not a pitch for services. One of the strongest things to do for you is to find you positive influences. Look at the choices, their habits, and the character that's under construction. And invest your time, your energy, and your resources into developing and cultivating those relationships. And the last thing here is called the power of the lean. I call it the power of the lean. When you go through something, and you will, just set your clock. Oh, yes, about that time. Something's probably going to go wrong. I'm not saying future trip and anticipate it, right? That's just anxiety in and of itself. But life happens and curveballs, they come. Suffering happens, and many times we just give pat answers or we give canned cliches or what I call bumper sticker theological statements because we don't know what to do with it. Lean upon that positive support system that you're cultivating. So you've got to be intentional about building and cultivating that positive support system, but then you've got to lean upon it. Not isolate. Not stay in your room. Not just blast on social media and then hide behind that veil of virtual protection. But leaning upon someone else and then being open to their perspective. One of the things that I'll do when someone's sitting in the office, especially I do this with adolescents, but everybody, it applies, and most of the time works. I will ask them to freeze with their body posture. Don't move. Tell me how many pictures are on the wall behind you. And they're like, 4. Okay, tell me what's in the picture. A horse, a rabbit, or it's a black picture or a white picture. Then they just guess. And I'll tell them, okay, look behind you. I just painted my wall, so there's nothing on the wall at all. Man. But it illustrates that our perspective is limited. As smart as you may be, I'm not knocking intelligence, I celebrate it. But there's limitations. As much money as you may have, I'm not knocking resources. Celebrate the blessings, that's good. There's limitations. And when we go through certain things in life, life has a way of humbling us to let us know we are limited in many respects to how we can navigate certain things. And we need the power of the lean. Leaning upon that positive support system that you are intentional to develop all along. All right, so let me read now these two very short summation articles, and then we will open things up for questions and answers. These are from Psychology Today. The first one is on anxiety. And keep in mind everything that we just covered as it describes anxiety. Anxiety is both a mental and physical state of negative expectation. Mentally, it is characterized by increased arousal and apprehension, tortured into distressing worry, and physically by unpleasant activation of multiple body systems, all to facilitate response to an unknown danger, whether real or imagined. The cognitive feelings of dread, in anticipation of some bad outcome, and physical sensations such as jitteriness and a racing heart are designed for discomfort. Anxiety is meant to capture attention and stimulate you to make necessary changes to protect what you care about. Occasional bouts of anxiety are, notice this, natural and can even be productive. Anxiety can be considered the price we humans pay for having the ability to imagine the future. But persistent, pervasive, or outsized anxiety can disrupt daily life. That's when it becomes a problem. Whether at school, work, or with family or friends, the mark of an anxiety disorder. Check this out. Nearly 1/3 of adults in the U.S. will grapple with out-of-control anxiety at some point in their lives. What is depression? The mood disorder may descend seemingly out of the blue, or it may come on the heels of a defeat or personal loss, producing persistent feelings of sadness, that was listed earlier amongst negative emotions, perceived negative emotions. Worthlessness, hopelessness, helplessness, pessimism, or guilt. Depression also interferes with concentration, motivation, or other aspects of everyday functioning. According to the World Health Organization, depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Globally, more than 300 million people of all ages suffer from the disorder, and the incidence of the disorder is increasing everywhere. Americans are highly concerned with, it's the H word, happiness, yet they are increasingly depressed. Some 15 million Americans battle the disorder, and increasing numbers of them Depression comes in forms ranging from major depression to dysthymia, kind of like a low-grade depression that just doesn't go away, and seasonal affective disorder. Depressive episodes are also a feature of bipolar disorder. Depression is a complex condition involving many systems of the body, including the immune system, either as a cause or effect. It disrupts sleep. I just wanted to sit there for a second. It disrupts sleep. And interferes with appetite, in some cases leading to weight loss, in other cases to weight gain. It's also oftentimes accompanied by what I called earlier, its cousin, anxiety. Research indicates that not only do the two conditions co-occur, but they overlap in vulnerability patterns. And finally, because of its complexity, a full understanding of depression has been elusive. There is mounting evidence that depression may actually be a necessary defense strategy of the body, a kind of shutdown or immobilization in response to danger or defeat that is actually meant to preserve your energy and help you survive. So the two things that we focused on earlier that we want to do, develop a positive support system. And then we want to practice the power of the lean. All right, I want to open it up for some questions. Cool.
So if you don't have a question, I'll pass the mic around and you can ask your question. Do we have any questions? Well, this is the expert here. Julie, this mic isn't
Does this land, is it relevant, do we think? Can you identify with some of it?
I think all of us are experts.
Say that again?
I think all of us are experts on the topic at this point.
Okay. School can contribute to anxiety, maybe some sadness, that's true. I mentioned student loans earlier.
I have a question for them. What causes stress and anxiety for you?
Money. Being busy, not having time for yourself.
Say that again.
Being busy. I go to school during the week and work. I don't want to.
Anxiety is,
I'm good. I go to school all week and work all weekend, so I'm always busy.
Yeah.
So that being
Yeah.
part of stress.
And so my encouragement is, I understand the notion and the work ethic, hard work. I get that. I was raised with that. Brad knows my family. We work hard. We believe in hard work. And I imagine all of you are working extremely hard. But if you don't carve out time for self-care, remember there's limitations. Those are emotional, those are mental, those are physical. There's limitations. Now, many times I hear parents say this a lot. Well, I'm doing this for my children, so I'm going to work 70 hours for my children. And I may not see them, I'll see them in passing, but I'm doing this to take care of them, and yet they don't take care of themselves. And it's kind of like when I fly a lot with United, or I did pre-pandemic. And whenever I would fly, you would hear the flight attendant go over the safety spiel about, okay, this is what you do. I had one cat who did this in Birmingham. He was dancing when he did it. I paid attention then. I was like, okay, all right. He's enjoying himself. But it's the same spiel if you've flown a lot. And they tell you what happens when the masks come down. They tell you how to put the mask on, right? And usually they'll give this caveat. They'll say, for the parents, make sure that you put the mask on whom first. Okay, we heard two different things. Somebody said kids. Who said kids? Okay, in that direction. So kids, and then somebody else said something differently. Yourself. Why yourself? Because if you put or try to put the mask and secure it on the child first, and I know you're being mama bear and you're being papa bear and you love your children, as do I. I love my children. But if you go out, you pass out, and you don't take care of yourself first, you're not going to be able to tend to them and make sure they're okay. Self-care, this is something maybe we can talk at length in the future about, is vital. Find a way, the best you can, if at all possible, to carve out time for you. It may not be the quantity that you want, but you can put some quality in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. But I appreciate the honesty. I
I
appreciate
think a
it.
lot of it is about finding out what you can do for yourself, except what you can do for yourself. Some people are so busy, they can't even figure out what they can do to improve their mental status. I mean,
Great.
I see that a lot with my students.
Great point. It's a great point. What are some ideas? What do y'all think? What are some things that you do to help with self-care or to deal with anxiety or depression or trauma that may come our way? Or days?
Listen to music.
I was about to say that. I got me like a playlist select. Listening to music. Very good. Oftentimes, as a tidbit or as an aside, I will encourage people to make playlists for different times. Like I have a gym playlist, Brad. And it does not sound like the playlist that I play like if I'm having trouble with sleep. Or my riding down the road playlist. It's not going to sound like that, right? But I'm not going to be listening to some soft and like elevator music if I've got a 6-hour trip ahead of me. Strategically devise playlists. I have a study playlist. I'm in a doctoral program right now, and I have a research playlist. There's a lot of piano and whatnot on it, some classical music on it. But yeah, so music, great insight. Yeah. Any other recommendations in light of what was shared as far as what helps you practically amidst the busyness?
I'm the opposite, I turn everything off. No
Okay.
No music, nothing.
Some silence, yeah. What is that again? No. Yeah, silence, that's right. Some solitude. I'm not talking about isolated behaviors, but solitude. There was an ancient practice. It's in various spiritual traditions about solitude. Dare I say, now I'm not talking about only. The rock, not anger, but the rock will reference the gym as being his what? Sanctuary. It's a meditative practice, working out could be another one. Now, not to the nth degree that you got to know him. So we have to make sure that we're holding each other accountable and bringing things in. Great examples. Anyone else? Were there any other suggestions in light of the wonderful question there? That's really good. Practical things we can do.
So Shannon, I have a question.
Yes.
So we're involved with church, we have youth coming in, and you mentioned building a positive support network.
Yes.
And we try to bring youth in when we see them struggling and talk to them, but my question more pertains to, and I guess like my wife's in education, she sees kids at the high school level that are struggling with anxiety and depression, and maybe they're to the point where they don't think they have that network or don't know how to find it. So what are some things maybe that you could encourage, or what can we tell these kids that maybe are at a point where they don't think they have that network? How would they seek out and find something like that to build on?
Okay, so great question. I think that this is where community development, and remember I said the power of the lean. We are in a very individualistic, westernized mindset oftentimes. We're trained, we're conditioned in that direction, that we oftentimes fail to realize or partner with the community resources that are out there. And so maybe encouraging or facilitating, connecting that person with either a mental health professional that may be able to help, making sure that they're reporting any symptoms or symptomatology to their pediatrician if it's a child or adolescent, to your PCP, your primary, if you're an adult. And so just to rule out physiological possible underpinnings to things. And I think that being aware of our neighbors, again, practice social distancing. I'm all about it. I've got my long beard mask right here. It's got a Viking on the side. I like it. Practice, the protocols that we have before us. That's very, very important to keep people as safe as possible. But being neighborly, I think, goes a long way. Slowing down amidst the addiction oftentimes to hurry. And that is another addictive tendency that we have. Slowing down enough to invest in the lives of the people around us, because it's not just my children. It's not just my child. When we talk about community, it's our children. So if it's another child, for example, Brad, that's at a church gathering, and they're part of the faith family, the fellowship, this is our children that are struggling with anxiety and depression. So maybe trying to facilitate some neighborly consciousness, so to say, being aware of, or more aware of, how we're hardwired for meaningful, significant, substantial relationships. Money will come and money will go. Nice rides will come and shine, but they will also rust out and leave you stranded at times. Kicks will come and kicks will go, but relationships, meaningful, substantial, significant relationships, takes us slowing down and being intentional with our time, our resources, and our energy. I don't know if that may be alluded to or
Yeah, you're good.
that's it a little bit. Great question. Great question. Keep coming.
Could you speak about the comorbidity of anxiety and depression? If I'm pronouncing it right.
I'm sorry, I could not.
How that anxiety and depression are comorbid?
The comorbidity?
Yes.
Yeah, so, and that's something that we alluded to earlier, is that there is a prevalence to the co-occurring disorders. And that means that that's why I reference them as cousins. Because oftentimes if a person is struggling with depressive symptoms or a depressive disorder, there is the presence of some kind of anxiety disorder, and vice versa. And so that there is a prevalence to the comorbidity of anxiety and depression. That is true, very true. All the more reason why that And I get going to an office, for example. We got telehealth too. You know, there's different agencies that do. But I get going to an office can be a bit uncomfortable. You're going to an office, and I'm going to talk about my what? My issues? Or my struggles? Now, not everybody who comes to see me talks about the struggles and problems, because we build on strengths too. I work with athletes, and we talk about focus. I work with various people that are not having your so-called crises or traumas, but as we alluded to earlier, we know the world in which we live. And it's a world that lends itself to anxiety and depression. And so while we see these occurring quite often together, I think that seeking professional help is vital, because they do help us rule out, okay, you can see a psychiatrist to see if there's maybe some psychotropic medication that may assist, or physiological underpinnings that can rule out other contributing possible factors to the experience of those symptoms. And of course, I'm biased with therapy, I believe. So,
Sometimes I think procrastination too, people procrastinate a little bit about receiving mental health because they think that things will get better. When actually, you have your pendulum over here, your depressed pendulum over here, and the truth is, if you don't seek help and you recognize issues, that pendulum may never actually swing back, because you have changes in your brain that may cause the pendulum to never actually swing back to the happy frame of mind you once had. So you have to really work on keeping a certain frame of mind.
I agree. That's a wonderfully insightful statement. Neuronal highways, I think of the interstate system in my head oftentimes, that experiences do shape and there's development, or even degradation at times that takes place because of what we go through. Trauma has a physiological impact on someone. There's various scans and imagery and things that we could explore or look at that shows trauma can be very, very impactful. And so, yeah, not procrastinating, not waiting until the last minute. Remember I said the development of the positive system of support, not waiting until life pulls you over, or a diagnosis pulls you over, or a phone call pulls you over with something that we don't know what to do with, or we don't know what to do with it, or how to deal with it. But being like Captain Sully, who trained again and again and again and again, surround yourself with a system of support, which includes, I think, professional help and professionals that are trained in this, that believe in it, that do this not just for a paycheck, but because you have compassion, you care. We care about our community. Great comment. Questions. Anybody else? I do this all day long, but I know there's another half to learn. There's a lunch, so.
Yeah, they gotta get lunch.
Okay.
Some of them gotta get back to class,
Thank you all so much for having me. I'm going to send Ms. Helen some resources, some recommended books and podcasts and things like that I'll email her. Not coming from Amazon, but I'm going to send her a list of recommended resources, podcasts, videos, YouTube videos, and things like that may be of assistance. And I am a hop, skip, and a jump away. So let me know if there's anything that I can do, if you will. Okay, thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.